Heart patients in the north of Sri Lanka have no choice but to travel to Colombo or Kandy for heart surgery. Most of them die on the way. The Oxonian Heart Foundation wants to open a heart surgery unit in the north. Do you have a heart to help? To find out more or to make a contribution, visit www.helpaheart.com.
Did my internship in Jaffna in 74-75, and really that was the only reason I came at that time was just to, I suppose, to reconnect. And at that time my grandmother was still living in Cockville, and that was a way of actually coming back and re-familiarizing myself, because I had left Sri Lanka in 1958. It also helped me a great deal in terms of revamping my Tamil language, which was slowly eroding by that time. And that was also an opportunity to put some energy back into it. And this has been useful in the long term. So my interest in Jaffna has been from 74-75, from a professional point of view. And my interest in cardiac surgery, anyway, I've been training and been a consultant in Oxford for over 20 years, but I've been in the specialty for over 36 years. People say, what is the word Oxonian related to? We use the word Oxonian in order to describe our foundation for a variety of reasons. Oxford is a very familiar, as is Cambridge, a very familiar word in Sri Lanka and particularly in Jaffna. Everybody remembers, the Oxford box of instruments, the mathematical instruments, in a tin box. You drive around Oxford, there's the Oxford Academy, Oxford this, Oxford that. So there's a great familiarity with the word Oxford. In addition, there are, of the 12 heart surgeons from Sri Lanka, I think 5 or 6 came and trained with us in Oxford. So there's a great relationship and a great association. And of course, we also got to be mindful, and I can't deny the fact, it also represented in our political climate a neutral word, which is also important. So having said all that, what we brought is a funding mechanism. We hope, when I was in Jaffna in 74-75, there was a cardiothoracic unit here. And I worked with an excellent surgeon called Dr. Natkunam. But of course, at that time, there was no open heart surgery, and most of the cardiac surgery consisted of closed operations, such as closed mitral valvotomies, and the only open operation was closure of the ASD, which we did under hypothermia. And what hypothermia means is you anesthetize the patient, you cool the patient down to 32, put the patient quickly onto the operating table, quickly drape the patient, and you had about 10 minutes to do the operation because you had to do it before the patient warmed up. Not satisfactory, but a large number of patients were helped by that kind of surgery. In addition to the surgeons coming to Oxford, in the 90s I brought several teams consisting of anaesthetists, heart-lung technicians, intensive care nurses, operating department nurses, to the National Hospital in Colombo and Jayah Hospital, and helped start the national program of open heart surgery in Sri Lanka. So for me, being involved in trying to bring this about in Jaffna is only an extension of what I've been doing for 20, 30 years. But of course, I've not been able to do that for 20, 30 years for a variety of reasons in Jaffna. Even now, one of my main priorities would be to encourage the cardiac surgical department in the public sector. I'm glad to hear from my cardiology colleagues that funding is becoming available. Even then, I'm sure from the time you get funding and from the time you lay the first stone, it'll be about 4 or 5 years before it becomes established, particularly recruiting personnel, both nurses, very important people in this subject, and other doctors and surgeons. In the meantime, because there is a private facility available here, up and running, with a modern day operating theatre, intensive care facilities, it would actually be negligent, if you like, not to make use of such facilities as soon as one can. So it was against that background that we put together this and created this new model of a partnership between charitable intent and the private sector, which has the advantage of ensuring a revenue stream so that once the program starts, you don't stop the program because you'll run out of some equipment or money is not available for the next 3 months due to the budgetary constraints that we often see in the public sector. So I think it's a good model. I think it's a different model. I think it's a new model. I think it's an innovative model. And it may be that the high end of the medical care is not going to be entirely provided in the long term in the public sector, because it cannot be sustained. While the public sector looks after primary and possibly aspects of secondary care, I'm sure is this kind of partnership, both with the charitable organizations, business communities, that can sustain expensive tertiary care such as cardiac surgery.
It is indeed a significant event today. The Oxonian Heart Foundation has entered into a partnership with the Northern Central Hospital in Jaffna to set up a cardiac surgery unit here. This gathering is tasked with the function of raising awareness and funding for the performance of cardiac surgery here in the north. Now, you have been hearing a lot of doctors. I speak with the experience of a patient who had undergone bypass cardiac surgery over 1.5 dozen years ago at the Apollo Hospital in Chennai. I had witnessed the great strides made in India, particularly at the Apollo Hospital, Chennai, in the field of cardiac surgery, with the input coming from doctors trained in the USA. A young doctor recently returned from USA performed my surgery. I remember my brother-in-law, who himself was trained as a doctor in the British tradition, having gone to Britain in 1958, the same year that Ravi had gone, examining the CD portraying my heart surgery and describing it as near perfect. No wonder I'm still batting on. The need for the establishment of cardiac services in the northern and eastern regions of Sri Lanka, apart from other regions, cannot be gainsaid. Patients needing cardiac surgery have to travel to Colombo or Kandy. This involves, as all my predecessors have said, long travel, inconveniences in staying over in Colombo or Kandy, difficulties in language, extra costs and implications with regard to recovery after major surgery. In fact, I had to stay over in Chennai for a period of time, having been released from the hospital to be seen again at the Apollo to check on my progress. Such staying over for someone from the north in Colombo, not having a relative or friend in Colombo or Kandy, can be extra costly apart from the uncongenial environment into which they have to enter into. It is estimated that around 700 patients require open heart surgery per year from the northern province. All cannot be accommodated at the government hospitals, hence the need for private hospitals for those who can afford. Dr. Ravi Perumal Pillai has played a leading role in seeking the involvement of Oxonian Heart Foundation in the current venture to provide facilities at the Northern Central Hospital, Jaffna. We are told the following facilities for cardiac surgery are to be made available: a dedicated operating theatre, an intensive care facility with 4-bed intensive and high dependency area, a 10-bed ward for pre and post-operative patients and basic surgical needs. Needless to say, the availability of non-medical personnel for cardiac surgical programs is an essential necessity. As a patient who underwent heart surgery, let me relate some anecdotes which might be useful to you in planning your services. And I find my sisters from the nursing profession are here. It affects them. At the time I was diagnosed in Colombo that I needed heart surgery, I had to go to a private hospital in Colombo. The nurse had to take a sample of blood. She looked quite senior but effused no job satisfaction on her face. Anyway, when she took blood from the center of my right arm, it was quite painful, so I winced. The nurse was furious. She shouted at me in Sinhalese, "Stop moving your arm, otherwise I will have to prick you several times." For all her screaming, I have had blood taken several times earlier, but it had not pained me so. The nurse was clearly not professional, but I kept my cool. I was then a Court of Appeal judge. Anyway, that was over. I moved over to Apollo. The Kerala nurse, young and beautiful, comes and taps at my door. I say, "Come in." She speaks very good English. "Good morning, sir. How are you today? I have to take a little blood, sir. You can be rest assured that it will not pain you, sir." Saying, she takes the blood sample. I did not feel even a scratch. It was so smooth and easy. She again said a number of things like, "Sir, you will be all right soon. Don't worry. Everything will be back to normal in a few weeks. Sir, so many have undergone these operations. They are all quite well and healthy. You will be so," and so on. I was truly impressed. This is nursing at its best, I thought. What a difference between the middle-aged senior nurse in Colombo who said, "Nikan dangalan nato inda," and the very young Kerala nurse who said, "You will not even feel my taking blood, be relaxed." I say this with a purpose. I am told many of our Tamil girls have still not compromised with the question, to be or not to be a nurse. A stigma seems to attach to the nursing profession among our Tamil girls. Hence, finding proper nurses could be a problem. Maybe we have to look into the option of capable male nurses. Please plan ahead. It is the nurse who is with the patient more often than the others. They must be extraordinarily professional and humane. And this comes from a patient, not from these doctors. Let us hope, with the help of the Oxonian Heart Foundation, my friend S.P. Sami would be able to reach another milestone in his distinguished career as a businessman, as a film producer, as a newspaper magnate, and guest house owner. The fund for treating the destitute is quite interesting. For every 5 fully paying patients, the trustees and directors of the Northern Central Hospital have promised to perform 1 procedure free of charge. The provision of adequate funding for treating and training is important to ensure the long-term sustainability of the cardiac surgical service. Let us hope adequate funds could be raised and the undertaking would bring solace to the life of cardiac patients in the north, in the east, and elsewhere. I thank you for inviting me for this function. Thank you.